Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ATSC 3 stage. And thanks for your interest if you are here to hear about ATSC 3. And thanks for your interest if you are here to have just a quick break and listen what's going on in this new market. My name is Mathias Bendull. I'm with Dolby Labs and I'm responsible for our audio codec activities. You may have heard today's news about TV markets will start ATSC 3 transmissions in 2020. 40 markets have announced that they will go on air. And this is great. This is great because it's an opportunity for consumers to experience new value that ATSC 3 provides to them. Next generation audio experiences are the ones I want to talk today a little bit about it. And when we think about next generation audio experiences and the value they provide, the question obviously is, who is interested in terrestrial broadcasts? Now, Maggot, together with the TV station group Pearl, asked consumers, are you interested in next generation television services? And the answer was yes. You can see more than 91% expressed interest in next generation television services, which is pretty amazing. They wanted to know more. They wanted to understand what actually is it that you are interested in. And it may not be surprising, but what they are interested in is something that is a replication of what they get today when they enjoy services delivered to them through the internet. They wanted to have what they roughly describe as more interactivity, something where the consumer can engage with the service in a meaningful way. And some of those examples include incremental information coming with the program delivered to the consumers. The other question that was about the value ATSC is able to provide was in the context of what does it mean when you watch content with your family, with your friends. And again, consumers responded very positively to that question in saying we are interested in services becoming what they called more inclusive. Think about the idea that you are watching a program, a sports program, where you are not entirely familiar with how the rules of the games are, but you would have an opportunity to have either a very entertaining additional language track or additional commentary, or one which is educational, which brings you as the non-fan into that sports as well. So this kind of, we can watch together, we can come together and enjoy this experience is something that they responded extremely positive to when asked about the next generation television services. And when you summarize this, and again, this is a slide taken from Maggot, the consumer research group, it was very clear that there are experiences consumers really deeply care about. And they believe that ATSC 3 will provide them these services. And if they have access to those services, they will watch television in that specific way. Number one ranking was immersive sound. Dolby Atmos has been delivering this, and it's an opportunity for broadcasters over ATSC 3 networks to make this available as well. Number two was actually quite a surprise. It was an interest in better understand the dialogue, what is spoken on the screen, not in an environment where you have someone who may be hard of hearing, but in an environment actually where it's a replication of how consumers enjoy television services today. It's the idea of watching television set in an apartment, in a condominium where you have other sound sources around you. You may be listening to radio, you may be listening to music at the same time, and you watch television in parallel. And if you have a chance, because your mind scientifically is capable in distinguishing the sound sources, and if you switch your attention to the screen and the big screen suddenly delivers the content you are interested in, you are focusing your ears, if you like, your hearing on that specific content. But if the dialogue is better audible in that content, then you actually get the full experience, to get the full kind of immersion in that specific instance as well. And then there were a couple of other use cases which were very positively responded to by the consumers, which were about different audio tracks. Think about languages, think about audio description, think about home and away teams and things like that. Again, consumers showed really strong interest in next generation audio. And we are very happy as Dolby to provide a solution to those, to deliver that value to the consumer. On a high level, what we are providing is our next generation audio solution called Dolby AC4. And it covers, and it has been designed, and it has been designed on a very high level to deliver value through immersive sound, through personalization, through personalized sound. It is something that is more inclusive here under the brand of accessibility, and it's not only beneficial to the consumer, it also has a benefit actually for the service provider, which is in a very economical way deliver content, save cost when you have next generation television services delivered, which we call here adaptable. Now let me double click on a couple of those with a little bit more context for you. So when you think about personalization, what comes to mind is the idea of I, as a consumer, have a very specific interest, and this specific interest may be on a very high level a language. I'm part of a language group. I may be a fan of a specific sports team. Now we are able to deliver those experiences today, and some of you may have experienced them, but we are delivering them in a not very efficient way, and we are delivering them in a way which creates additional cost and therefore is not necessarily attractive. And to some extent, what is even more relevant is that some of those additional audio tracks that we deliver today actually represent a diminished experience. So if I'm listening, for example, to a secondary language, then I get that language in stereo or mono, whereas my main program may be 5.1. So I have suddenly an opportunity where I can deliver individual language tracks, same experience, whether it's immersive, and regardless, suddenly the secondary language becomes the primary language. So we can start thinking differently about these type of services through personalization. I'm not sure how many of you have experienced Dolby Atmos, either in a theater or you have access to that through the different device types which we have made available very broadly to the industry. Dolby Atmos basically means that we are able to deliver immersive sounds. An immersive sound on a very, very high level at either height or dynamic movement or both for the consumers, so it actually engages the consumer in a much more natural way with the content that is delivered to the consumer as we were ever able before. Our hearing is an incredible scientific instrument, and when we listen to stereo or to 5.1 sound only, we actually only capture, or we only recognize a very small portion of what we are actually able to hear. Now with immersive sound, we are basically expanding that experience in a way that is more engaging. Now there's value to that for the consumer, but there may also be value to that for the TV station, because suddenly if you have immersive content, you bring the audience to stay on that specific program much longer than they may have done that before, so there actually is a dual benefit for both those who provide the service and those who are the consumers. I talked about inclusion a little bit. This is the idea of really providing content that's tailored to individual needs, but allows a broader group of audiences sitting in front of a television set to enjoy it the way they would like to enjoy it. As I already presented, was with a commentary which is just more educational. This is one of those. There may be other use cases where the technology is just a tool for delivering those experiences. So I'm sure that together with the industry, we will work very closely to explore what other opportunities exist in that space to make it more inclusive, more attractive to a broad audience. there's the concept of more broadly available through a wide range of opportunities and contexts. So we want to see the audiences engage with ATSC3 as we roll that out with all those values we can provide. We have been working with the industry for many months to provide first services. The Phoenix model market was one of the first markets where we have spent a lot of energy on, and we have now a program that is made available to consumers, provided they have a playback device, they have a receiver that receives ATSC3 across a number of different stations to deliver that experience to them. I talked about the benefit for the consumer, but I think it's also very important to recognize that there needs to be benefit for the service providers as well. And I'm not sure how many of you work for TV stations here, but one of the things we really have been caring about was to make sure that we recognize that the listening environment has substantially changed. People are consuming their contents today on a variety of devices, and we don't want necessarily to provide those devices a completely individualized stream. Today's fully designed to do this. We know that streaming services have multiple assets of their content which is made available depending on what the are. Now in ATSC3 we try to avoid that. We try to have mass market and mass application of content through a broadcast delivery service. But the consumer, depending on what they are listening to, would have an opportunity to get the best experience depending on what device capabilities exist. So when you think about this, content being broadcasted to the living room may be consumed on a television set, but with someone who listens to headphones because he doesn't want to disturb the family or the neighbors. Someone may have a television set again which is plugged into or which is connected to a soundbar and therefore wants to have a different type of experience. That soundbar may be a soundbar which is just stereo or 5.1, or it may be a home theater which has a full immersive Dolby Atmos support. Now the idea we have here,
We'll swap you out, buddy.
that's okay, thank you. So the idea we follow here is that we can create and deliver a specific program once, and it will then play back the best possible experience depending on what device it is. Because the device capability, or the device has the capability to take all the information that is and render it and play it back depending on whatever the output, the speaker output, the playback output of my individual device is. So it really allows a broadcaster to really focus on delivering the content once and then don't worry so much about the environment, because each of the individual consumers in their homes will have the best possible playback depending on what device they are actually utilizing. So I'm going into a little bit more detail about what the consumer actually will experience. And the key element here is that we want to make it as possible, as easy for the consumer to identify what is available to them, but also do that in a fashion that it actually is as close to and as frictionless implemented to the service provider as it is possible. So when you think about the image we are showing here is, we assume that we have a high-level guide which provides all the different TV stations. And in cooperation between the TV stations and the TV manufacturers, we have also a menu which allows the consumer to identify what actually are the things he has that are presented to him. So think about here in this case, the guide, which we have kind of highlighted on the bigger screen, has already information that is available or made available through the service as such. In that specific case, if you look at the TMC information here, it tells you that that program specifically is in English. Now, if that program would also be made available in Spanish, you could have a little marker which says English or Spanish, so it actually helps the consumer at the highest level of the program to identify what is of interest to them and how it's delivered to them. Now, when you double click on this for a second, actually now we go one level deeper in the menu. And we envisage that we have now for the consumer the opportunity to identify the individual components of the sound that is made available to them. Whether speech will be the guidance to a dialogue enhancement or not is something that depends obviously on the implementation on the television. But we envisage that there will be a common agreement amongst the TV manufacturer who builds ATC3 television sets that allows the consumer in a consistent way to identify here's an opportunity to improve my dialogue. And when I say improve my dialogue, I'm not talking about something which is a really complex and complicated menu I have to drive. I'm talking about an opportunity ideally where either on a remote control or with one click I'm getting to the menu and I can say I switch dialogue enhancement on or I switch it off. And that on and off, and you can listen to that here on our demo, that on and off provides a differentiation that boosts the dialogue just a little bit, just enough to make it more easily audible, and ducks the music and effects a little bit, so you actually have that experience. But it needs to be available in a very simple, in a very easily navigatable way by the consumer. The other thing you can see here is that we envisage that there will be information about different audio tracks. Now, those audio tracks at this point are at that level potentially very general.
Does the system also allow for closed caption?
Just 1 second. Just need to switch it on. Okay, try.
Hello?
Yeah.
Come on?
Good.
Does your system allow for the use of closed caption capability, English, Spanish, French, and so forth?
Yes.
Is there a restriction on the number of languages, or you can put as many languages as you want?
It's a great question. I was coming to that afterwards, but I'm happy to answer the answer right now. The system has no limitations. The system would allow a broadcaster to have closed captioning or video description services for every language, and it would be transmitted in a way, and it would be played back in a way that, depending on whatever you're listening to in your living room, it could be mixed into the 5.1. It could be mixed into stereo. So it really depends on what content is made available to you in what channel configuration, but there's no limitation whatsoever. So if you have a Spanish audio track and you have selected a Spanish audio track, you would automatically get, for example, the video description service in Spanish, provided it's made available to you. And you would also see that on that guide, or it actually may automatically happen if you have selected that this is what you want to listen to. If you have switched on the video description service, you will get it automatically, but it will also show on your guide automatically, because we provide that information as part of our media descriptor, as part of the data we deliver to the TV. You don't have to worry about it at all. As a consumer, it will be very easy, very simple to navigate. So thanks for the question. So when I double click this for a second again, let me just see. Yeah, you see now I moved into the track menu, and the track menu now displays all the capabilities I have. And yes, here you have your video description. We have been just using a number of languages here, plus kind of the idea of home and away, which is kind of the last commentator you see as well. Now, the key element behind that is that as a consumer, you would like to have that information always up to date. Something you may be very concerned about is if you have something which has been originally assumed to come in different languages, for some reason it doesn't work. Now, you may still have that on your program today as something that is delivered to you in different languages, and you will be very disappointed if it's not actually happening. Now, what happens here is, because this is basically information which is embedded in the audio we are providing, that this guide will always be automatically updated depending on what is made available through the specific program to you. So if there is no video description service, this wouldn't even show up on the menu. If there are only 2 languages, you get only the 2 languages. So it basically is always built into the system, automatically updating the information that is made available to the consumer. And this is what it's all about. We want to make it easy for the consumer to interact with these next generation experiences. So we talked a little bit about the consumer, we talked about the experience. One of the questions we usually get is, that sounds all great, but how is it going to work? How do we transition from a world we are living today into this new world? And it's becoming a little bit more technical now, so bear with me for a second. The way we think about this is what a TV plant, a broadcast plant, has to deal with. When you think about what is today, we are thinking about delivery of content through an SDI link within that broadcast plant. And you can see here that in today's world, we have stereo and we have 5.1 services. And for both of those services, we have either secondary audio or we have video description. And we use the existing infrastructure in a way that it's very consistent. So when I switch from, let's say, a news program to a sports program or to a drama program, this is all happening rather seamless in the plans. Now think about the future. Think about suddenly TV services offering much more than just stereo or 5.1 channel configurations. And we just used examples here. We use a sport example, which is about a 5.1 plus different language or the different commentators for the different teams, for example. And again, we also want to have video description and potentially a different language associated with that. When you look at that sports column now, you realize that we have suddenly made a substantial break in how we deliver the content through the plant. This is not what any of the consumer sees. This is what happens for the operator on the television plant. How do I ensure that I deliver now content which was 5.1 and now I switch to something which is sport with an immersive experience? And you can see that actually I have to do and I have to navigate very carefully when I do these switches, because suddenly I don't use those 8 channels anymore. I suddenly have to switch to 16 channels. And if I'm not setting up my system in the right way, I will lose some of those experiences. I may lose some of the languages. I may lose some of those audio tracks because I have not done the right switch in my plans. And the same would happen when I think about the movie, where I have a 7.1.4, and you can see it just becomes more complex. And those switches are, when I switch from one program to the other, something where we want to make it really seamless for the broadcaster as they implement these type of services. Now, ideally, this is what it could look like. We are recommending that if your plant has been built today for delivering 5.1 services, but you have usually as an SDI connection up to 16 channels made available, continue delivering the 5.1 content as it exists today to all of your programs, through all of your programs. And then we can use AC4 to deliver all the bells and whistles of these new programs, the immersive sound, the different dialogue, the different tracks. We can deliver that in the remaining 2 channels, 15 and 16. And the device that receives that content at the end of the day will automatically select, based on the information available, whatever is the content they want to play back. But from a broadcaster perspective, it's really smooth, it's really frictionless, and it makes sure that even if something goes wrong in the broadcast plant, your consumers at the minimum always get a 5.1 experience with the video description and with the secondary language if this is available. So basically the first 6 channels, as they are here in purple and green, these are all made available, the first 8 channels, they are all made available to the consumer all the time. And then the AC4 piece is just the piece that happens for those incremental services. Now, ideally, this looks like this. The further you are able as a broadcaster to push the encoding in AC4 up the stream towards where the content is created, the better it is for you, because you can basically use all your different distribution paths in a meaningful way without any degradation of the service and with consistency through the system as it happens. So we have designed Dolby AC4 in a way that it actually serves all those purposes. You can use it as the secondary distribution, you can use it as a primary distribution, you can use it basically as the connection between the original production, whether it's an OB van or something else, and the broadcast center. So we would be nothing without our partners. And we have been working very closely with them over the last couple of years to ensure that the capabilities of AC4 are implemented in consumer products, are implemented in professional products, are implemented in those who provide components to those consumer products. Oops, sorry. Here we go. So you can see that there's an incredible amount of TV manufacturers who support AC4 today. Now, if you are asking as a consumer, can I buy one of those TVs and receive ATSC services today? The answer is no. The answer is no, because TVs in market today don't have the ATSC tuner that is necessary to provide this type of service to the consumer. But the positive end is that TV manufacturers have been very clearly committing themselves to make those TVs available for their 2020 model rollout. So when all those markets start launching services in ATSC later in 2020, you will see TVs in market, so consumers can actually buy and experience those services for the first time. There are, as I said, a number of other partners we are engaging with which just are necessary to enable those products in the market. So let me quickly summarize the value enhanced audio delivers to those new ATSC television services. This is really about delivering differentiated audio experiences in terms of immersive sound, in terms of personalization, in terms of better audibility of the dialogue. All things which have clearly been demonstrated and proven by the consumers are things, are values they as consumers care about. All of you here are consumers. Whether you are watching TV over the terrestrial air network or not, this will be an opportunity to enhance your experience going forward. We also want to make sure that the value we provide becomes a motivation for consumers to actually buy new equipment, but also enjoy those new services in a consistent way. So we're very happy to be together with part of the various industry partners who support ATSC in a position to deliver this value that next generation television services are able to bring to the consumers and eventually to you. And I hope that you have an opportunity within 2020 to actually experience for the first time what ATSC can do to you, not only in a trade show, but in a broader context, either consumer or as someone who contributes to the content that is delivered, or someone who contributes to the delivery of that content to the consumer. With that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Before television manufacturers have the AC4 technology, will you also see component manufacturers, home theater receivers, Denon, as an example, integrating it possibly earlier, and then would it not matter if your TV has the ability?
So we have TVs with AC4 in market today. So the TVs will be the primary device with AC4 playback capabilities. We do at this point not see a strong adoption of AC4 decoding in soundbars or AVRs. We are able to provide the experiences on soundbars and AVRs through through AC4, if that is delivered to the television set,
Right.
because we kind of
Through an ARC connection, for
Correct.
example. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't see at this point the lack of availability of AC4 in soundbars or AVRs as a hindrance for those experiences. Actually, the TV deployment will provide all these services. And when you think about amongst the multitude of products we have brought into the market, the specifically capabilities of television sets to provide immersive services, also rendered through the TV speakers as such, is something which will actually make those immersive services, Dolby Atmos, available to a much broader audience that you would ever have with soundbars and AVRs. When you look at the total units shipped as soundbars or AVRs, it's a very small portion, a small fraction of what TV shipments actually are. And even if manufacturers start with ATSC 3 tuners in the higher end products initially, and if one representative manufacturers speak up what you plan to do, I don't know exactly, but I think we will see that growing, that segment growing much faster than soundbars or AVRs. Any other questions? No? Wonderful. Thank you very much for your attention. And we are all looking forward to see you as ATSC 3 users in the future. Thank you.